Leo, please, I'm begging you. Just give me the Star of Aster. It's the only thing that can save Ethan's company. Jessica Vance was clutching my arm, tears streaming down her face, a perfectly practiced picture of distress. This was the face I'd been obsessed with for 10 years, and at this moment, all I could find it was pathetic. I couldn't help it. I laughed. Yeah, I laughed out loud. Here she was, begging me for my family's most sacred heirloom. Not for me, not for us, but for another man. It was the final, absurd punchline to a decade-long joke where I was the only one who didn't get it. And in that moment of clarity, all I could do was laugh. Jessica froze, her mascara-rimmed eyes widening. She was clearly not expecting this reaction from the guy who'd fetched, rolled over, and practically offered to let her rip his own heart out if she'd asked nicely. What are you laughing at? Leo, Ethan is about to lose everything. Don't you have a heart? A heart? Oh, I used to. But over the last 10 years, she and her precious Ethan had carved it out piece by piece, stomped on it, and ground it into dust. Now, I was just a stranger occupying this body, an outsider who'd been forced to binge-watch the entire tragedy from a front-row seat. A madman, here to settle the original owner's score. I'd transmigrated. 3 minutes ago, I was a writer, typing the final words of my latest web novel. The next, I blinked and found myself inside the very book I'd just finished. A trashy, old-school romance novel full of angst and betrayal. I was Leo Miller, the tragic supporting character, the doormat who gets used and abused by the female lead for 800 pages before dying a pointless death trying to save the male lead. And this scene? This was the classic turning point. The female lead, Jessica, comes to me, her long-suffering fiancé, to ask for the Miller family's legendary heirloom, the Star of Aster, an uncut diamond of impossible value, so she can use it as collateral to save the company of her one true love, Ethan Hayes. In the book, the original Leo hesitated for all of 3 seconds before agreeing. What happened next was a train wreck. Ethan didn't use the diamond as collateral. He sold it immediately, and the money didn't go to his company. It went to a new limited edition sports car for himself. When my grandfather, the patriarch of the Miller family, found out, the shock triggered a fatal stroke. He was gone within a week. And me, the original Leo, not only did I not blame Jessica, I actually comforted her. I told her it wasn't her fault, that my grandfather was old anyway. Pathetic. Utterly pathetic. I raised my hand and gently pried her fingers from my arm. Her skin was cold, trembling slightly. Jessica, my voice was calm. So calm it surprised even me. What on earth makes you think I would do that? Jessica's eyes went wide. For the first time, those perpetually misty eyes that used to make my knees go weak held a look of pure, unadulterated shock. Leo, what? What did you just say? She looked like she couldn't trust her own ears. I said no. I enunciated slowly and clearly. The Star of Aster is a Miller family heirloom. It's the pride and joy of my grandfather. It is not a toy for you to win points with your boy toy. The words boy toy hit her like a slap across the face. Her cheeks flushed a deep red, not from shame, but from pure rage. Leo, how dare you? Ethan and I are in love. What we have is real. Real love. I laughed again, this time with a thick, undisguised layer of scorn. Real love is his company going under and you running to me for a bailout. Real love is living in my penthouse, driving my car, and spending my money, all while dreaming of another man. Jessica, I want you to look deep inside that soul of yours, if you can even find it, and ask yourself, what have I been to you for the last 10 years? A boyfriend or a walking, talking ATM with no credit limit? Every word was a dagger, and I watched them land. Jessica's face went from red to a ghostly white. Her lips trembled, but she couldn't form a single word of protest, because it was all true. The amount of money the original Leo had spent on her over the last decade was astronomical. From designer lipsticks to the sprawling penthouse overlooking Central Park, all she had to do was hint, and it was hers. He thought he could buy his way into the space Ethan occupied in her heart. He thought his devotion would eventually win her over. He was wrong. To someone who doesn't love you, your sacrifices aren't sacrifices. They're expectations. The tears started flowing again, but this time she switched tactics. Her posture softened, her voice dropping into a desperate, pleading whisper. Leo, I know how good you've been to me. I'm so sorry. But Ethan and I, we're out of options. We're desperate. Please just help us this one time. This is the last time, I promise. I swear. As soon as Ethan's company is stable, I'll be with you. For real. I'll never see him again. She raised her hand as if to make a solemn vow. God, what a familiar line. In a novel, that was her go-to move, the magic trick that made the old Leo roll over every single time. Too bad that idiot wasn't home anymore. Don't bother. I cut her off. Your promises aren't worth the air you waste saying them. I walked to the foyer and pulled the heavy door open. The door is right there. Get out, and don't come back. Ever. As of today, you, Jessica Vance, and I, Leo Miller, are done. We are nothing to each other. Jessica stood frozen, as if she'd been turned to stone. She never in a million years imagined I would say those words to her. She stared at me, her expression a cocktail of confusion and fear, as if she were looking at a monster wearing my face. Now, are you? Have you lost your mind? No, I said, looking her dead in the eye. My voice was deadly serious. I just woke up. Just then, a tall figure filled the doorway, radiating an aura of impatient arrogance. Ethan Hayes. He'd arrived. The hero of our little story had finally made his entrance. He swept a stumbling Jessica into his arms, then fixed me with a condescending glare. Leo, I heard what Jessica said. It's just a rock, man. Are you really going to give a girl this much grief over it? His tone was so casual, so entitled, as if my handing over a priceless family legacy was a foregone conclusion. I looked at his handsome, arrogant face, and a wave of pure disgust washed over me. This was the man Jessica loved. This was the man she was willing to ruin my life for. A selfish, egotistical prick who thought the world revolved around him. I ignored his question and reached for the intercom on the wall. Security? This is Leo Miller in the penthouse. I have 2 uninvited guests. Please come up and escort them out. I hung up. Ethan's face darkened instantly. Leo, what the hell is that supposed to mean? It means my home doesn't welcome you, I said, making a polite, dismissive gesture toward the door. Now get out before I change my mind and decide to throw you out myself. Ethan looked like he'd been struck. As the sole heir to the Hayes fortune, he was used to people kissing his ass, not being told to get out. His face cycled through shades of red and white. Jessica's soft sobs from the crook of his arm only made him feel more humiliated. Miller, don't push your luck. Ethan's voice was low, laced with threat. Jessica being with you is the best thing that ever happened to you. Don't think you're hot stuff just because your family has some old money. Oh, I raised an eyebrow, genuinely amused now. And what's the best thing that's ever happened to you, Hayes? Sending the woman you love to beg another man for money to save your ass. You. My words choked him, his face turning the color of a ripe plum. I'd hit him exactly where it hurt, his fragile, pathetic pride. A man who needed his girlfriend to sell her affections for his benefit had no right to act so high and mighty. Jessica must have felt the sting too, because she tugged on his sleeve. Ethan, let's just go. Go where? He violently shook her hand off, his anger boiling over. He pointed a finger at me. Leo, I'm telling you right now, you're giving us that diamond today, one way or another. You piss me off, and I'll make sure the Miller family can't do business in this city ever again. Big words. In the novel, the Miller family did, in fact, crumble under the combined scheming of Ethan and Jessica. But the person playing the game now was me. Is that so? I walked calmly to the wet bar, poured myself a glass of Cabernet, and swirled it, watching the deep red legs crawl down the side of the crystal. I look forward to seeing you try. But before you run my family out of town, you might want to worry about yourself. From what I hear, Hayes Industries has about 3 days of cash flow left. Tops. 3 days from now, the collection notices from the banks and the breach of contract lawsuits from your partners are going to hit your desk like an avalanche. And when that happens, what do you think your true love, Jessica, is going to do? Stick around with a broke loser like you? My words were a scalpel, slicing through his bravado and exposing the rotting panic beneath. His pupils contracted. That information was a closely guarded secret within his company, known only to a few key executives. How could Leo Miller possibly know? For the first time, a flicker of fear appeared in his eyes. How? How do you know that? How I know isn't important, I said, taking a sip of wine and savoring the complex notes. What's important, mister? Hayes, is that you're running out of time. Just then, the elevator chimed, and two uniformed security guards stepped out. They took in the scene, confused, but still offered me a respectful nod. Mr. Miller, I set down my glass and gestured to the two people by the door. Please escort them out. And from now on, without my explicit permission, these two and any other stray dogs are not to set foot in this building again. The guards hesitated, glancing at Ethan and Jessica. They were both well-known faces in the building, the heir to the Hayes fortune and my longtime girlfriend. Now I wanted them thrown out? Mr. Miller, I'm not sure. Do you not understand English? My voice turned to ice. Or would you perhaps prefer to look for a new job? That snapped them to attention. They knew better than to cross the people who lived in this building. Yes, sir, Mr. Miller. They moved quickly, each taking one of Ethan's arms. Mr. Hayes, Ms. Vance, if you'll please come with us. Ethan's face was practically black with rage. He struggled, but the guards were strong and held him fast. Leo, you'll pay for this. You just wait. He was still spitting threats. I didn't even bother to look at him. Jessica just stood there completely stunned. She watched the man she loved being dragged away like a common criminal, then looked back at me, at my cold, unfamiliar eyes. She couldn't understand how everything had gone so wrong. In the space of 30 minutes, how had the man who worshipped the ground she walked on turned into this merciless stranger? It was only when the guards were pulling her through the doorway that she seemed to snap out of it, screaming back at me over her shoulder. Leo, you'll regret this. You're going to regret this for the rest of your life. Regret? I raised my glass and drained the rest of the wine. No, I was going to celebrate. Celebrate the fact that I had finally woken up. Celebrate the fact that this nightmare was finally getting a new beginning. With Jessica and Ethan gone, the silence in the penthouse was bliss. The first thing I did was call my assistant. David, I need you to do something for me. Immediately reclaim every asset registered under Jessica Vance's name that is tied to me. That includes property, vehicles, jewelry, and cancel all of her unlimited black cards. Give her 3 hours to vacate the penthouse on Central Park South. 3 hours. If she or her things are still there after that, call the police and have her charged with trespassing and theft. On the other end of the line, David Chun was silent for a full 10 seconds. Mr. Miller, are you sure about this? He probably thought I'd finally cracked. As my personal assistant for the last 5 years, he'd had a front row seat to the decade-long saga of my obsession with Jessica. I've never been more sure of anything in my life, I said, my tone leaving no room for argument. Also, I need you to start digging into Hayes Industries. I want to know about every project they're currently pursuing, especially the South Hudson development deal. Give me everything you can find. The more detailed, the better. I want in my inbox in 30 minutes. Yes, Mr. Miller. David didn't ask any more questions. He was smart enough to know when to just execute. After hanging up, I went to my home office and fired up my laptop. The original Leo might have been an idiot when it came to love, but he'd inherited the Miller family's sharp business acumen. The portfolio under his name was vast, spanning real estate, finance, and entertainment. The only problem was he'd spent most of his time trying to please Jessica instead of actually managing it. Even with his neglect, the company was incredibly profitable, thanks to the world-class team my grandfather had put in place for him. Now, it was time for the sleeping lion to wake up. David's email arrived exactly 28 minutes later. I opened the attachment. A mountain of data filled my screen. Hayes Industries, a mid-tier real estate developer, respectable enough in the New York scene. But in the last 2 years, since Ethan took over, a series of disastrous decisions and reckless expansions had left the company's finances in shambles. The South Hudson project was their last hope, a massive urban renewal contract that could save them. If they landed it, Hayes Industries would be resurrected. To get it, Ethan had gone all in, leveraging every connection he had, even taking on high-interest loans from shady lenders. And in the original novel, he succeeded. Using the Star of Astor as collateral, he secured a massive loan from a mysterious billionaire, won the bid, and rode the subsequent real estate boom to become one of the city's hottest young tycoons. That mysterious billionaire, of course, was a distant uncle of his. The two of them had cooked up the whole scheme to not only steal my family's heirloom, but to make the Millers a laughingstock in New York society. A cold smile touched my lips. I wouldn't make the same mistake twice. In fact, I was going to give Ethan Hayes a taste of what it felt like to fall from the top of the world into a pit of mud. I dialed another number. Mr. Roberts, it's Leo. The voice on the other end belonged to the Miller family's long-serving butler and my grandfather's most trusted confidant. Leo? What a pleasant surprise. What can I do for you? Mr. Roberts, I need you to get in touch with Mr. Sterling at Sterling Auctions. Tell him the Miller family is interested in the South Hudson project. What? Mr. Roberts was audibly shocked. Leo, I thought you had no interest in the family business. That was the old me, I said, my voice steady and firm. From now on, I will be personally managing all of the Miller family's interests. And tell Mr. Sterling at the auction, I don't care what the Hayes family bids. We will bid $100 million more. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. When Mr. Roberts finally spoke, his voice was thick with emotion, a mix of relief and pride. Yes. Yes, of course. Leo, you've finally grown up. I'll make the call right away. I hung up the phone and leaned back in my chair, staring out at the glittering city lights. The game was just beginning. Ethan, Jessica, I hope you're ready. The next day, a tremor shook the foundations of New York's business world. At the highly anticipated auction for the South Hudson Development Project, Miller Corp., which had shown no prior interest, swept in at the last second. They placed a bid so astronomically high it left the entire room breathless, snatching the project right out from under Ethan Hayes. When the news broke, Ethan reportedly collapsed and was rushed to the hospital. Hayes Industries stock plummeted into a nosedive from which it would never recover. Partners started pulling out, and the banks began calling in their loans. The once proud Hayes family became toxic overnight. And me, Leo Miller, the pathetic fool who had just been publicly dumped by Jessica Vance, was suddenly, forcefully, back in the spotlight. Everyone was stunned. No one could figure it out. How did the lovesick puppy who had followed Jessica around for 10 years suddenly transform into a ruthless corporate predator? The person most baffled by this was, of course, Jessica herself. After I kicked her out of the penthouse, she was left with nothing and had to move in with the Hayes family. When she saw the news, saw how I had spent a fortune to utterly destroy the man she loved, she was catatonic. She couldn't believe it. The man who loved her so much he would have died for her couldn't possibly be this cruel, this calculating. She blew up my phone, but I didn't answer a single call. Finally, she resorted to ambushing me outside the gates of the family estate in Greenwich. I had just finished a game of chess with my grandfather and was heading out. As the gates swung open, I saw her standing there, looking haggard and frail. She lost weight, her face was pale, and her once perfect hair was a tangled mess. The glamorous goddess was gone, replaced by this desperate-looking woman. The second she saw me, she ran forward as if I were a life raft in a hurricane. Leo, she grabbed my sleeve, her nails digging into my arm. Why? Why would you do this? Her voice was a raw, raspy thing, full of disbelief. What did Ethan ever do to you? Why did you have to ruin him? I looked at her, and the absurdity of it all almost made me laugh again. What did he do to me? I repeated, as if she'd just told the funniest joke in the world. He went after my fiancée, schemed to steal my family's assets, and publicly humiliated me. You tell me, Jessica, what did he do to me? Her body swayed, her face growing even paler. No, that's not it. He didn't mean to. He wasn't thinking straight. Even now, even at rock bottom, she was still defending him. My patience evaporated. Jessica, save the pity party. Do you really think I'm the same idiot I used to be? You think a few tears are going to make me go soft? Let me be clear. That will never happen again. I pried her fingers off my arm, one by one. You and Ethan Hayes mean nothing to me. Your lives are not my problem. With that, I turned to get into my car. Leo, she screamed at my back. You will regret this. You lost the one person who loved you most in this world. You'll never find real love again. I stopped, one foot in the car, and looked back at her. My expression was one of pure pity. The person who loved me most? Jessica, did you ever love me? You love my money. You love my status. You love the lifestyle I could give you. As for real love, a slow, knowing smile spread across my face. What makes you think I haven't already found it? I got in the car and left her standing there, the color draining from her face as my words sank in. I was in fact on my way to meet someone, a woman who had only a small role in my novel, but who had left a lasting impression on me. Claire Evans, Jessica's college roommate, and her former best friend. I say former because as soon as Jessica had sunk her claws into me, she'd slowly pushed Claire away. The reason was simple. Claire had warned her, more than once, not to play with my feelings, not to treat me like a backup plan. Jessica didn't appreciate the advice, and their friendship withered. Late in the book, after the Miller family had fallen and I was dead, Claire was the only person who visited my grave. She'd left a single bouquet of flowers. I remember the line I wrote for her. "Leo, you damn fool. You love the wrong person." Looking back now, she was perhaps the only glimmer of light in that bleak, toxic story. I'd asked her to meet me at a small coffee shop in the West Village. She was already there when I arrived, sitting at a small table by the window. She wore a simple white sundress, her long hair falling over her shoulders. No makeup, just a clean, natural beauty that was a world away from Jessica's brand of aggressive, look-at-me glamour. Jessica was a rose, beautiful but covered in thorns. Claire was like a quiet wildflower, elegant and unassuming. She stood up nervously when she saw me. Mr. Miller. She seemed wary of me. I couldn't blame her. In the public eye, I was Jessica's obsessive ex-boyfriend, a maniac who'd gone on a vengeful rampage after being dumped. "Ms. Evans, please sit," I said with a warm smile. "And call me Leo." I ordered her a cup of Blue Mountain coffee, her favorite. She looked at me, surprised. "How did you know I like this?" "A lucky guess," I said. I certainly couldn't tell her I knew because I had literally written her character. An awkward silence settled between us. Claire was the one who broke it. "Mr. Miller, Leo, why did you ask to meet me?" Her tone was polite but distant. "I was hoping you could help me with something," I said, getting straight to the point. "I own an entertainment company. We're developing a new TV series, and I'd like to hire you as the lead writer." Claire just stared at me. She had a degree in screenwriting and had been trying to break into the industry for years, with no luck. She'd sent her work out to dozens of production companies, only to be met with silence. "Me?" She pointed at herself, her eyes wide with disbelief. "Why me?" "Because I believe you're incredibly talented," I said, looking her directly in the eye, my voice full of sincerity. "I read that short story you published online a few years ago. Firefly. It was brilliant." Claire was completely stunned. Firefly was a passion project from her college days. It had gotten no traction, and she'd all but forgotten about it. She never imagined anyone would remember it, let alone the infamous Leo Miller. Her eyes started to well up, not with sadness, but with the overwhelming emotion of being seen, of having her work acknowledged. "Mr. Miller, Leo," I corrected her gently, "and Claire, this isn't charity. I'm not doing this out of pity. I'm offering you an opportunity, and offering myself one, too. I need a great writer for my new project, and I believe you're the one I've been looking for. Are you in?" I extended my hand across the table. Claire looked at me, her expression a mix of hesitation and hope. After a long moment, she reached out and took my hand. "I'm in." Her hand was warm, a complete contrast to the icy cold of Jessica's. After Claire came on board, things moved with incredible speed. She was a natural talent. In just 1 week, she delivered a full story outline that was sensitive, profound, and exactly what I was hoping for. It was a story about dreams and redemption. I greenlit the project immediately, assigning the company's top resources to it. I would serve as executive producer, with Claire as the head writer and showrunner. We started working closely together, in writers' rooms, on location scouts, during casting sessions. The more time I spent with her, the more I discovered. She was quiet but not shy, brilliant but not arrogant. She was meticulous in her work and kind to everyone she met, from the studio heads to the production assistants. Being with her felt easy. It was a feeling I hadn't realized I'd been missing my entire life. Meanwhile, Jessica and Ethan's lives continued their downward spiral. After Hayes Industries went bankrupt, Ethan was buried under a mountain of personal debt. He sold everything, the cars, the watches, the condos, just to satisfy the banks. The former golden boy of New York real estate was now completely broke. To my surprise, Jessica stayed with him. Maybe she really did love him. Or maybe she just couldn't accept that the grand romance she'd bet her entire life on had ended in such a miserable failure. They moved into a cramped, run-down apartment in Queens and fought constantly about money. Ethan blamed Jessica for everything. He started yelling at her, and then the yelling turned physical. At first, she fought back, but over time, she just grew numb, accepting the abuse. The light in her was slowly being extinguished. I ran into her once, by chance, at a department store on Fifth Avenue. She was working as a sales associate in a luxury handbag boutique, dressed in a drab uniform. Her face was caked in heavy makeup, but it couldn't hide the deep, weary exhaustion in her eyes. She was fawning over a wealthy client, her voice dripping with a sycophantic sweetness that was a grotesque parody of the proud, confident woman I once knew. She saw me at the same moment I saw her. I was with Claire, who was admiring a delicate necklace in a jewelry case. It was a silver chain with a tiny, elegant firefly pendant. Her eyes lit up as she held it. I didn't hesitate. I pulled out my black card. "We'll take it." Jessica stood a few feet away, her eyes locked on me, and then on Claire. Her face was a storm of jealousy, hatred, and something else. Something I couldn't quite decipher. Regret. I ignored her. After the transaction was complete, I took Claire's hand and we started to leave. I walked right past Jessica without a second glance, as if she were a complete stranger. As we passed, I heard her whisper, so faintly I almost missed it. "Leo, I'm so sorry. I regret it. I didn't break my stride." Regret? It was far too late for that. Once we were outside on the street, Claire stopped and looked back toward the store. I think she was crying. Was she? I said flatly. "So what?" Claire turned to look at me, her expression thoughtful. "Leo, are you still in love with her?" I blinked, then managed a small laugh. "What makes you ask that?" "Because the opposite of love isn't hate," Claire said softly. "It's indifference, and you're not indifferent to her. Everything you've done, it feels like you're trying to punish her. And revenge. Revenge is its own kind of obsession." I had to admit, she saw right through me. I was getting revenge, but not on Jessica. I was getting revenge on my own stupid past, on the decade I'd wasted on a lie. Maybe, I admitted, but it's not love. I looked directly into Claire's eyes. The old me was a fool, Claire, a complete fool, but I'm not him anymore. I know the difference now between what's real and what's fake, between a worthless pebble and a priceless pearl. I took the box from my pocket, opened it, and fastened the firefly necklace around her neck. The little silver charm glowed against her skin. It was beautiful. "Claire," I said, my voice low and serious, "will you be my priceless pearl?" A deep blush spread across her cheeks. She looked down, her fingers twisting the hem of her dress, her heart clearly hammering against her ribs. After a long moment, she gave a tiny, almost inaudible nod. "Yes." I smiled, a real, genuine smile that came from deep within. So this is what it felt like. Not obsession, not desperation, just a quiet, warm, and simple happiness. After Claire and I got together, I threw myself into our work. Our TV series, titled Firefly, went into production and was an instant hit. The ratings soared, and the reviews were glowing. Claire became an overnight sensation, hailed as the most exciting new voice in television. She was flooded with awards, offers, and accolades. On the other side of the city, Ethan and Jessica's world had shrunk to the size of a prison. After his business failures, Ethan had given up completely. He spent his days drinking and gambling, taking out his rage on Jessica. Her life was a living hell. She wanted to leave, but she had nowhere to go. Her family had disowned her years ago for choosing Ethan, and she had alienated all of her friends. She was trapped. Just as she hit rock bottom, Ethan suddenly changed. He stopped drinking. He stopped hitting her. He became gentle, attentive, and full of promises. He told her he'd found a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, a massive overseas project that would put them back on top. Jessica, desperate for any glimmer of hope, believed him. She threw all her energy into helping him, calling in old favors, trying to rebuild bridges. And then she made her final, fatal mistake. She decided to come to me. I was in a board meeting when David came in, looking uneasy. He leaned in and whispered, "Mr. Miller, Ms. Vance is here. She says it's urgent." I frowned. What now? Send her in, I said. I was curious to see what new level of desperation she'd reached. Jessica walked in a few minutes later, dressed to kill. A designer suit, flawless makeup. She had resurrected the ghost of her former self. But this time, the cold, calculating ambition in her eyes was impossible to miss. She strode to my desk and slapped down a file. Leo, let's do business. Her voice was confident, as if she were certain I couldn't refuse. I picked up the folder and idly flipped through it. It was a project proposal, an investment in a gold mine in some small South American country. The projections were ridiculous, the promised returns laughably high. I had to smile. It was the kind of clumsy, obvious scam only an idiot like Ethan could dream up, and only a desperate fool like Jessica would fall for. What kind of partnership did you have in mind? I asked, leaning back in my chair. Simple, Jessica said, holding up 3 fingers. You provide the capital. We provide the expertise and the connections. We split the profits 70-30. You get the 70. She thought money was still the way to my heart. It sounds tempting, I said, nodding slowly. Then, as she watched, I fed the entire proposal into the shredder next to my desk. The machine whirred to life, its grinding sound deafening in the quiet office. The color drained from Jessica's face. What do you think you're doing? I'm expressing my opinion, I said, standing up and walking around the desk to stand over her. Your little con game is amateur hour. Jessica, don't insult my intelligence by bringing this garbage to me. She began to tremble violently. I don't know what you're talking about. This is a real opportunity. Really? I sneered. Tell me, how exactly do you plan to extract gold from a mine that doesn't exist? And how do you plan to do it with your overseas partner, who happens to be a known international fugitive wanted for fraud? Jessica, go back and give Ethan a message for me. Tell him if he wants to play games, that's fine. But he should never, ever treat me like an idiot. Because if he does, I will have no problem sending him back to the hospital for a much longer stay. My words were like a bucket of ice water, shocking her into silence. She finally understood. I knew everything. Every pathetic little scheme was transparent to me. She stared at me, her eyes filled with a new, deeper kind of fear. Who are you? She finally whispered, asking the question that had been haunting her for months. This man in front of her looked like Leo, but he was a stranger, a terrifying stranger. I didn't answer. I just pressed the intercom on my desk. David, please show Ms. Vance out. As she was led away, she looked like a marionette with its strings cut, a hollow shell of a person. Her world had just crumbled for the second time, and I didn't feel a thing. My only concern now was Ethan. That cockroach just refused to die. If he wanted to play with fire, I was more than happy to burn his entire world to the ground. Jessica's failure sent Ethan completely over the edge. After beating her senseless, he made one last, desperate move. He decided to kidnap Claire. He figured she was my only weakness now. Get Claire, he thought, and he could get my money. In my novel, he'd done the exact same thing. Except back then, he'd kidnapped Jessica to force the original Leo to sign over the entire Miller Corporation. And the idiot had actually done it. His reward wasn't Jessica's gratitude, but a bullet from Ethan's gun. The memory made my blood run cold. History was repeating itself. But this time, I was writing a different ending. Ethan moved fast, hiring a few thugs to grab Claire one rainy night as she was leaving the studio. Everything played out exactly as I had written it, except for one detail. Just as a black van swerved to block Claire's car on a deserted side street, a dozen black sedans materialized out of the rain, their high beams flipping on and flooding the intersection with blinding white light. The kidnappers who had just jumped out of the van froze like deer in the headlights. Before they could even process what was happening, dozens of black-suited security men poured out of the sedans, surrounding them completely. I was at the head of them. I stepped forward under a large black umbrella, walking calmly to the driver's side of the van. I tapped on the window. It rolled down slowly, revealing Ethan's face, twisted into a mask of pure terror. Evening, Ethan, I said with a serene smile as rain dripped from the edge of my umbrella. Nasty night to be out. Lose something. His jaw worked, but no sound came out. He couldn't understand. His plan had been perfect. How'd I know? Why was I here? Surprised? I leaned in close, my voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. Wondering how I knew you'd be here, doing this, right at this very moment? I smiled. Because you're following my script, Ethan, and I'm the one who wrote it. His eyes widened in sheer, uncomprehending horror. He looked at me as if I were the devil himself. You, see you in. I see you're quite protective of her. Anyway, I've long been tired of her face. If you don't mind the dirt, I don't mind passing her on to you. Take them, I said, turning away with a flick of my hand. My men descended, dragging Ethan and his hired goons out of the van and forcing them to their knees on the wet asphalt. I went to Claire's car and tapped on her window. It lowered to reveal her small, pale face, her eyes wide with fear. The moment she saw me, the terror broke and tears streamed down her cheeks. Leo, it's okay, I said, opening her door. I'm here. I helped her out of the car and pulled her into a tight embrace. You're safe now. Her whole body was trembling. I held her, feeling a wave of fury, so intense it almost choked me. If I hadn't been here, if I didn't know the script, what would have happened tonight? I couldn't bear to think about it. All I knew was that Ethan Hayes had to be erased. I released Claire, letting my security team guide her to one of our cars. Then I turned back to Ethan. The rain was coming down harder now, cold and merciless. My gaze was even colder. Ethan, I said, crouching down in front of him. You know, the last time you tried something like this, it worked. You won. I lost. I died. He flinched, looking up at me in utter confusion. What are you talking about? I'm talking about the bullet you put in my chest, I said, my voice a low growl. A cruel smile spread across my face. I've already died at your hands once. So this time, I said, rising to my feet, I'm not giving you a second chance. I took a tire iron from one of my men, and as Ethan watched, his eyes screaming with terror, I raised it high. A blood-curdling scream tore through the night, only to be swallowed by the relentless downpour. I made sure Claire was shielded from sight. I never wanted her to see that side of me. I only wanted her to know that she was safe, that no one would ever hurt her again. I broke both of his legs. Killing him would have been too easy, too quick. I wanted him to live a long, painful life, to experience a fraction of the agony the original Leo had endured. He and his crew were handed over to the police, charged with attempted kidnapping, and locked away for a very long time. As Ethan's known associate, Jessica was brought in for questioning. When she saw him on a stretcher, his legs a mangled, bloody mess, she threw up on the spot. She stared at me, standing impassively at the end of the hall, and for the first time, a true, soul-deep fear entered her eyes. She finally realized I wasn't the old Leo anymore. I was a monster, and she was the one who had let me out of my cage. The incident left Claire deeply shaken. I put all my work on hold to be with her. I stayed by her side, read to her, and slowly, carefully helped her heal. When she was better, I took her to the family estate in Greenwich to meet my grandfather. He adored her instantly, treating her like the granddaughter he'd always wanted. Seeing them laughing together, playing chess in the sunroom, filled a void in my heart I didn't even know was there. This was family. That night, as I walked her to her room, she stopped me. Leo, she said, her voice hesitant. That night. What did you mean? When you said you had died once before. My heart skipped a beat. She had heard me. How could I explain? Tell her I was a soul from another dimension? That our lives were just a story in a book? She'd think I was insane. But looking into her clear, trusting eyes, I knew I couldn't lie to her. Claire, I said, my voice barely a whisper, if I told you that I'm not the original Leo Miller, would you believe me? She didn't flinch. She just looked at me, her gaze steady. I know, she said softly. It was my turn to be stunned. You know, I knew the day you said no to Jessica, she explained. The way the old Leo looked at her. His world began and ended with her. But when I look at you, I see the whole universe in your eyes. I was speechless. She had known all along and had said nothing. Aren't you afraid? I asked. You don't know who or what I am. I'm terrified, she admitted, her honesty taking my breath away. But I'm more terrified of losing you. It doesn't matter who you were or where you came from, Leo. I fell in love with the man you are now. The man with the universe in his eyes. Tears streamed down her face, and I pulled her in my arms, holding her like she was the only thing anchoring me to this world. Thank you, I whispered in her hair. Thank you for seeing me. Ethan was sentenced to 20 years. Jessica, with no direct involvement in the kidnapping, was released. But her reputation was destroyed. She became a pariah. I saw her one last time at my engagement party with Claire. She had somehow managed to get an invitation and stood in a corner, looking thin and worn in a faded dress. She just watched as I placed a ring on Claire's finger, tears silently tracing paths down her hollow cheeks. Later, as she was leaving, I stopped her. "What did you want?" I asked, my voice devoid of emotion. "To see," she whispered, "to see what I threw away." "And do you see it?" "Yes," she said, her voice breaking. "Are you happy?" "Very," I said, without hesitation. "Claire is everything." "And me?" she asked, a final, desperate plea in her eyes. What was I? I thought for a moment. "You," I said, a faint smile on my lips, were a poorly written character in the first draft of my life. A character I decided to delete. I turned and walked back to my fiancée, leaving her to the sound of her own shattering heart. I heard she left New York after that. I never saw her again. Our show, Firefly, became a cultural phenomenon. At the awards ceremony, Claire stood on stage, radiant in a custom-made starlight gown, clutching her trophy. "I want to thank my husband, Leo," she said to the world. "He gave a little firefly the wings to see the whole sky." I sat in the front row, my vision blurring slightly. She had it all wrong. She was the one who had lit up my entire world. Life with Claire was a quiet, beautiful dream. We built an empire together, traveled the world, and took care of my grandfather, who was happier than I'd ever seen him. Sometimes I'd wake up in the middle of the night, gripped by a cold fear that it was all an illusion, that I'd open my eyes and be back in my cold, lonely apartment. But Claire would just hold me, place my hand over her heart, and whisper, "Feel that? I'm real. We're real." And I knew we were. I had been sent here for a reason, to live the life the other Leo never could. I had protected his family and found a love he had only dreamed of. I had finally given his story a happy ending. Years later, sitting under the grapevines in our garden, Claire looked up from an old photo album. "Leo," she said, her head resting on my shoulder, "next time, in the next life, will you find me again?" "Always," I said, kissing her forehead. "No matter where you are, I will always find you." She smiled, and in the dappled sunlight, I knew my story was complete. This wasn't the end. It was just the beginning.